Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening. Welcome back to The Truth About Us. This is the podcast from Unstoppable Life, and I am your host, Don Crampert. If you are a first-time listener, I am glad that you discovered our conversation and welcome. If you are a returning listener, welcome back to the conversation, my friends. So, today, I want to talk about kind of the discussion. It all starts right here where we have these honest conversations about the internal battles and overwhelm that many men face but rarely want to admit out loud or even talk about it. And we uncover the quiet questions about identity and purpose and direction and emotions and being able to explore what it really means to overcome those struggles and identify the turning points that help us navigate the next chapters that shape our life, especially during the phases where we feel lost and we're not sure where to begin or even how to regain our confidence. And then we decide that the old version of life for us no longer quite fits. So we're continuing with this series, this new series, the next chapter. And like last week, I'm going to start today's conversation with another quality question. And here it is. What dream have you stopped talking about? Think about that for a minute. What dream have you stopped talking about? And I don't mean the dream you failed to achieve or a dream somebody else talked you out of. I'm talking about the dream that you quietly stopped mentioning. Maybe the one you stopped sharing or you stopped allowing yourself to continue to think about. For many of us, there comes a point where the conversation about dreams kind of simply disappears, goes dormant. And it's not because they don't matter. It's because life gets louder, like we talk about. The noise gets really amplified and our responsibilities take over and our careers demand our attention and families need our support. And eventually, survival becomes more important than possibility. At least that's what we tell ourselves, right? Have you told yourself that and thought that? Well, today, I want to talk about the dreams we leave behind because I don't think most of us abandon our dreams the way we think we do. I think something else completely happens differently. I think many men, including myself, simply stop believing those dreams are still relevant. And then there's a gradual disappearance of possibility. And I'm going to bring this kind of full circle, and we're going to start when we were younger. When we were younger, possibility felt unlimited. Remember this? We imagined different futures and different careers and different adventures and different versions of ourselves. Back then, we were willing to explore anything, and we were willing to fail and keep trying. And then what happens. As we get older, a little bit more mature, life starts happening. And some of those dreams work out, and a lot of the others don't. Disappointments accumulate, and responsibilities increase, and the risk becomes harder to justify. And without realizing it, many of us slowly shift from asking, "What do I want?" to asking, "What can I realistically expect?" And at first, that kind of sounds mature, right? It's responsible and practical. But sometimes, most times, practicality becomes a prison because there is a difference between being realistic and becoming resigned. One keeps you grounded, and the other convinces you to stop imagining altogether. And then there's a story we start telling ourselves. One of the most dangerous, impactful stories a person, a man, a woman can believe is, "My opportunity has passed." Maybe you've heard that and said it yourself. How about this? Have you ever heard or said this? "I'm too old. I should have started that years ago." That ship has sailed. That train has left the station. Oh, people my age don't do things like that. See, the interesting thing here is that many of those statements are not facts, my friends. They're conclusions. Conclusions we have reached after years of disappointment or comparison or fear or self-doubt. And the problem is that once we accept those conclusions, we stop looking for possibilities and opportunities. We actually stop asking questions. We stop exploring, we stop believing, and the meaningful could still be ahead of us. And eventually, we confuse acceptance with surrender. Think about that. We confuse acceptance with surrender. So, I'm going to go into a spot here and talk about what dreams actually mean. See, when I talk about dreams, I'm not necessarily talking about becoming famous or wealthy or achieving some grand ambition. Sometimes a dream is much simpler than that. Sometimes it's writing a book. Sometimes it's starting a business or traveling somewhere you've always wanted to go, or even learning a new skill or building something meaningful. See, it could even be something as simple as having a deeper relationship and making a difference and living with more freedoms. The dream itself isn't always the important part. Often, it's what the dream represents, like freedom or purpose or growth or adventure or creativity or contribution or just connection. That's why we have forgotten dreams and we continue showing up in our thoughts. Those ones that we've forgotten, they keep coming back. They're not always demanding us to be fulfilled, right? They're exactly as we imagine, and they are reminding us of something very important about ourselves. And there's a cost of ignoring them. I've went through this. See, myself and many men feel restless for reasons they don't fully understand. And we assume the problem is work or stress or the grayness of age or circumstances. Sometimes it is, but most times the restlessness comes from neglecting a part of ourselves for too long. And that part still wants to grow. That part still wants to create. That part still believes life can be more than just a list of responsibilities. And when we ignore that part of ourselves, life can begin to feel really small. It's more predictable, more mechanical. And while there's nothing wrong with the responsibility by itself or alone is not enough to sustain a meaningful life. We need purpose. We need possibility, and we need something that reminds us we're still alive and growing. Maybe it's not too late, my friends. I think one of the greatest gifts of getting older is perspective. You know yourself better. You understand what matters. We've survived things that once felt impossible or improbable. We have wisdom that we didn't have 20 years ago. Yet many of us and many men spend these years believing their best opportunities are behind them. I don't believe that for 1 second. In fact, we are entering a chapter where we finally have the self-awareness to pursue what really matters. It's not what impresses others and not what society expects. It's what matters to us. So the question isn't whether you can become the person you were at 25. You can't. And honestly, you shouldn't want to. The question is, and this is a better one, who are you becoming now? And what still matters enough to pursue? So some final thoughts here. If you stop talking about your dreams, you're not alone. I have done this and many men keep doing this, but maybe the dream isn't gone. Maybe it has simply been buried beneath the years of responsibility and the noise. And maybe the dream isn't asking you to change your entire life. Maybe it's simply asking you to pay attention, to remember, to reconnect. Because sometimes the dreams we leave behind are not reminders of what we lost. They're reminders of who we still are. So thank you for joining me on this episode of The Truth About Us. If today's conversation had an impact and it resonated with you like it did with me, be sure to subscribe to my Unstoppable Life Reset letter on Substack. Each of those issues, I explore these topics more deeply through reflection, application, and actions. Until next time, my friends, keep showing up, keep having honest and truthful conversations, continue to keep asking those quality questions, and if a thought, an idea, or a message keeps showing up randomly all the time, pay attention to it. It's your inner self telling you to investigate it because your dreams are alive and they are a part of who you are becoming. And this is the truth about us.